Hello and welcome back. This is Dave again for Let's Paint in iRacing Part 2. So last time we talked a little bit about setting up Photoshop and setting up your files so you can work quickly. Today we're going to actually start painting. And I've made a few changes since the last video. If you haven't noticed, this video, if everything went properly, is now in glorious 1080p HD rather than poor 480p resolution of last time. So hopefully that helps you guys actually see what I'm doing a little better. So, without further ado then, let's get started. I've pretty much left everything exactly as it was last time. So we have our nice blue car with the wireframe sitting at centripetal circuit, and we have our Photoshop file open, and I haven't even touched anything on this since that last video. So, we need to cover a few basics before I can actually start getting into painting, and the big basic that we need to go over first is layers. A lot of you guys probably know how this is work, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but if you don't, you might want to sit through and watch this. So in Photoshop, Photoshop I think is the first program that actually started using layers, and this is I think really what solidified Photoshop as being so important and so influential. And this really revolutionized how people did graphic design, and I'll show you why. So back if you ever painted something in Paint, you would have noticed that you always worked on kind of one palette. So if you painted something in red like this, and then you switch the color to say blue, and then you painted over that in blue, if you went and you tried to separate these two colors, you just couldn't do it, right? These two things are now exist as one entity. All those pixels that were red when you painted with the blue then became blue, and now they're gone. Layers essentially help solve this problem by painting on, instead of one canvas, you're painting on basically a sheet of transparencies. So I paint this red stuff on a transparency which is called a layer, and anything that's checkerboard here is transparent, and you can see the little red pixels there where I painted that. Let me make it a bit bigger so you can see it. You might be able to see it a little easier. You can see the little red pixels there. Now if I make a new layer on top like this, and you can do that by clicking this button here, which I mouse over, it says create a new layer. Okay, layer 2, and then I change this color to blue, and I paint over these red pixels. This no longer acts like what I did before. So now these two things are on two transparencies. The blue is on top of the red, and so if I can move the blue, I can move it around on top of the red. And if I grab the red, I can move the red around underneath the blue. Okay. Also, because these are not permanent changes on each other, so they're not acting permanently, I can change the order. And since they're on transparencies, I can, if I pull the red up to the top, so you can do that by just clicking on the red, holding this layer, and then dragging it up above it. You can see it turn into a little line. You let go, and now the red transparency is on top of the blue transparency, and the blue one is underneath the red one. Okay, and this is basically all that layers is. And I'm going to be using masks a bit, probably not this episode, but at some point in the process of painting this. And you have to just, people are very, I think, afraid of using masks. But masks essentially just work the same as these layers, except they work on top of other layers. I'm not going to get into that right now, but we will get into that a bit later. So this is basically all how a layer works. Okay, and you can see if I grab both of these layers, and in this base folder, there's this base color palette. It's just a big square that covers the whole thing that's blue. And you'll see if I drag both of these layers down underneath the base, they both disappear, right? Now they're being covered up by this layer right here. Or if I say drag them on top, you can see them all the way on the top. They're even on top of the wireframe because they're right on top. And if I drag, so the wireframe is in this folder, if I drag it down under this folder, you can see now the car mask and the wireframe are actually on top of it, and I'm moving these things around underneath them. Okay? So that's basically all how layers work. It's not too complicated, but if you've never worked with this before, you might take a little bit to wrap your head around. So, layers, that's fine. Okay, so now we can actually start painting. So first thing I always do is I grab this base paint that's on and I just take that and delete it because I don't like using that. I don't find it good enough. What I do instead is I grab the rectangle tool. It's not that it's not good enough, I don't find it easy enough to work with very quickly. So what I do is I grab the rectangle tool and I draw a box that just covers the whole canvas and I drag it all the way to the bottom. And if you double click on the words here, shape 1, you can rename it and I'll call it base. Okay. And I've noticed last time I said okay a lot, so I'm going to try to stop saying okay so much because I can see how that gets really annoying and I don't want to do that. So, and if I say okay a lot, let me know that I'm saying okay a lot because I don't want to say okay so much. So now we have to make a decision what we want the base color of this car to be, and I'm thinking what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to make the base white and then I'm going to paint this black on top of that, and then I'll go with the blue on top of that and then the red or this pink color underneath that. So I'm thinking I'm going to make the base of this car white. So easy enough. This is why I use a rectangle rather than this base layer that I deleted from here, is in order to change this color is really easy. All you do is you double click the color, opens up the color palette window, you just drag it up to white, you hit OK. But now we've run into a problem because the wireframe on the car is white and our base is now white, so we can no longer see the wireframe, and that's a big problem. So this is really easy to fix. So you go into this turn off folder, you find the wireframe, which is right here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to do a color overlay on this to change the color of the wireframe to make it a different color. And usually what I do is I pick a color that's not in the paint scheme itself, so I can always see it really easily compared to what I'm painting. So you do that really easy. You just, instead of double clicking on the name to change it, you just double click in the empty space next to it, open up the layer style and blending options. You go down to color overlay right here, click that little word, not that, if you turn the tick box you turn the overlay on and off, but you click the word, you actually open up a set of options for it, and again you just click the color, brings up a color palette window, and I'm just going to make it green. Yeah, we'll make it what colors from the car here? Red, blue, yeah, okay, we'll make it green. So we'll make it green like that. Maybe I'll make it a little darker so I can see it easier. Okay, so now we can see the wireframe, and this particular technique of using a color overlay like this is the exact technique you would use if you need to recolor a solid colored logo, which we might be using later, and so I'll show you how to do that as well. But it's the exact same technique. You just do a color over like this, really easy. There's a couple other ways of doing it, but and there's ways of doing multicolored logos which don't involve this technique, which I might get into. I probably will get into at some point. So, but this is the good starting point. So now we can save. And something I always do ever since I've had a couple Photoshop crash on me a couple times and eat up my files is I don't always just save the file to this one file. I always do a Control-Alt-S and then I'll save it to a file called backup, whatever you want to call. And I'll do this every 10 minutes or something. So if Photoshop crashes and eats this file that I'm working on, I always have a backup, so I don't need to start again from scratch. And I've had to do that a couple times. I've had to start from scratch, and it's a big pain in the ass. You really don't want to do it. It takes a couple seconds, and it's just it's worth it just to save yourself a lot of heartache. Okay, so now we have a base color, which is white, and we need to start painting stripes, and we need to start picking colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, grab a car which has a nice representative set of colors. This one looks pretty good. I might be able to get a color from here and from here. This looks a little too dark. This one actually looks pretty good. I might be able to grab a color from here and here and maybe brighten them both up if I need to. This is way too washed out. This is too dark. Yeah, okay, I'm going to start with this one and then go from there, I think. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this file, and I'm just going to drag it and drop it in this open space up here where the options and stuff is, not down here. If you drop it in here, it'll actually put it into your picture, but if you put it in here, it opens it up as a new tab within Photoshop. So we're not going to need this right now because this color is just black, so we don't really need that. So first thing I do now is make a new folder, and you do that by pressing right here next to the new layer. It's a new group, okay, and you rename it the same way you rename a layer, and I'm going to call it left side, and I put all the stuff on the left side in this folder. It helps to use folders just to stay organized. If you just start throwing layers all over the place, it's going to be a mess, and if you need to find something and change it, it might be very difficult. So let's see, let's open up this picture. So this goes this black, so I'm going to start working with the black stripe. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the black stripe like this and come all the way down like this, and then I'm going to paint the blue stripe like this on top of that, and then just leave a part of it, and then I'm going to do this part of the blue stripe like this. So I'm going to do basically cut this whole blue section in half. So this is going to be one half, this is going to be one half, and they're both going to be separate, so I can move them separately from each other. So let's say I put this down, I like the shape, but I just need to move it over to the right. I can move it to the right and not play with what I've painted over here. Otherwise, if I do this in one shot, which I think a lot of people do, if I paint this just in one piece like this, if I need to move this to the right, the whole thing gets moved to the right, including this, even if I have this section painted exactly how I like it. So I like painting in chunks like that, in blocks, so, or modules if you want, so I can move these modules around independently from each other. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to paint the black stripe up like this, and then I'm going to come straight down like this, and then I'm going to paint, using layers, this blue stripe on top of that, and then this red underneath the blue. Okay, so kind of comes down underneath the light here, comes up, and then into this, the back of this rear pillar. So let's see how that works out here. Okay, let's see. So it comes like this. The vent. Okay. Is there a way I can avoid the vent? It doesn't look like there's any way I can avoid the vent. iRacing, please don't do this anymore. These vents are terrible. So I'm gonna have to come up in through the vent and hit in the back of this door here. Okay. So I think the best way of doing this, and usually this is the way I do it, is when I'm gonna just paint it down like this. I'm not gonna worry about the vent. I'm just gonna paint over it, and get the shape I like, and then I'm gonna worry about the vents later and maybe do them last as I'm doing the final touches on the car. So where is this? So if you follow this line, you can see, and this is a good way. This is what you think I'm just like hawing around a bit, but this is usually the way I paint, and it's a good way to do it. Is you just get yourself oriented and lined up, and that's basically what I'm doing now. So there's like this line that comes through here, and then the tail light starts right after, and so we're coming out the back of this tail light like this. We're going up, and we're going. You can see the seam of the door. It's like halfway through the seam of the door in the next hatch on the wireframe. So I think that's what we're going to do. So let's get ourselves oriented here. So we can see the tail light here. We can see the seam right here, and the door is here, and then this pillar will come down right about here. So what I'm going to do is drop some guides down just to help me keep myself oriented throughout this process. And you can do that by, if you have rulers on, if you hit Control R, you can turn rulers on and off. And if you right click on that, you can set either pixels, inches, centimeters. Because we're painting only virtually, pixels is probably the best way of doing this. So you just hit pixels, and in order to drop a guide down, you just click on the ruler and hold it and drag, and then you can drop a guide. So I'm going to drop a guide right here. Excuse me, about halfway through here, so we know where we start, and then I'm going to drop a guide right here so we know where we finish. Okay, no, okay, stop saying okay. Now, I'm going to hit the pen tool, and I'm going to pick my color, which is black. And so now you can learn how to use the pen tool. So the pen tool is very simple. It basically draws a Bezier set of curves around, and it draws it as a vector. And then Photoshop takes that vector and rasterizes it, basically turns that vector into pixels. And then that's what's displayed on the image. Okay, so Photoshop doesn't work with vectors the same way that Illustrator does. Illustrator is purely a vector-based program, whereas Photoshop is a pixel-based program. But you can use these vectors within Photoshop to make your images a lot crisper. And this is why I say don't use the brush, because the brush paints purely with pixels. And the problem with that is if you take something with a brush, let's make a new layer, and you paint like this, okay, and then you take it and you size it up like really, really big, it looks like crap, right? The edges are all fuzzy because Photoshop is trying to figure out where all of these pictures are supposed to be. The picture is really small, you make it big, and you've added more pixels to this, and now it's trying to just kind of fade out the edges to make it look as natural as possible. If you do the same type of thing with the pen and you make a shape, because it's all vector based and then turned into pixels after, if you make it really, really big, you can see you don't lose any fidelity on the edge. It's just as sharp because all you're doing is changing the size of this vector, and then Photoshop is saying, okay, this is the new vector, and then turns and fills all the pixels inside of that. So this is why you want to use the pen. One of the reasons why you want to use the pen compared to the brushes. So how to actually use the pen. So the pen works pretty simple. You basically just click and drag and it'll set. So let's start. So you click and you can make a point. That. So we'll start here and we'll work our way this way. You can then, if you click and drag, you can see it pulls a line, which is the tangent of this particular curve. And if you don't like where your line has gone, if you hold down Control and click on the point, you can move the point up, you can move the point down. If you grab one of these control points on the edge, you can change the angle of the curve. So you have a lot of flexibility in what you can do with this. Also, if you hold down Alt, you can remove the control point or this control curve on this, and I'll show you what this does in a second. So if I continue the curve like this, you can see it does a nice smooth curve like that. If I hit Alt and click on this point, you remove this side of the control points like that. Now if I drag, you can see it makes a sharp edge. Okay? You can also click anywhere on this line to add a new control point, which you can curve and drag. Oops. If you ever lose it, you just hold Control down. Oops. Like this, and then you click within the shape and then click on the line and you can get it back. And then you can just click and do all of these nice, really smooth, curvy shapes anywhere you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line that comes from here to here. So I'm going to click and drag, following the path of this rear light. That. Then I'm going to click and drag a point up here because this is a very simple curve. Like this. And now I've basically finished this curve. So what I can do now is hold Control down, and I'm going to get rid of these guides. You just drag them off the screen and they go away. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it back like this, and I'm not even going to worry about where this ends. So I'm just going to click, not drag, to make a sharp point, and then I'm going to click like this, and click like this, click like this, click up, and then you click back on the first point and it closes it. Okay. Now I'm going to save it, press OK, and then open up the software, refresh, and see what we've done. So that's not too bad. I think we haven't completely matched up. So this particular curve, it's really sharp and then it kind of smooths out, whereas the curve we made is a little more gentle. So I'm going to go back and fix that now. And I think the best way of doing that is actually adding a second point in. So I'm going to click on this line here, make a second point right here in the middle of the line, pull it up like this, and like that, and I'm going to change this just to make it a little more smoother. And this is why painting, I think, takes a lot of people a lot of time. Even the big guys who are the pros in this, is just, you know, the time it takes to just fiddle with these points to get things looking exactly how you want it. This looks a little too sharp, so, and then this kind of tapers off like that. So let's see how that looks. Ooh, that's too sharp. That's way too much over here. So let's just bring it back a little bit more. That. Let's try that. And this is why it's worthwhile to save within that folder, because you could see how long this would take if I had to drag these files over every time. It's versus now where I'm just, sometimes there we go. Versus now I'm just easily just saving and previewing, saving and previewing and saving and previewing, which is what you should be doing. It's constantly previewing what you're working on. So that is not horrible. We might have to come back later and fix this area up a bit, because where this circle is, it's a little wonky. Things around this particular vent have a tendency to get a little bit distorted. They get pushed down and compressed in this area and stretched out around here. So I think I'm going to leave that for now and then come back later and just fill this in right here with another path with a pen tool, another shape, just to fill the shape in. But I think for now I'm not going to worry too much about it. So it'll be like right here. It'll look really weird on here, but it should look fine when I look at it over here. So that's fine for now. We've got this first black arc in. Even though I'm not particularly satisfied with it, I can go back and change it later. Next thing we need to do is worry about this blue. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint this blue on top of it, and then I'm going to do the white stripe underneath that, I think. So now what we're going to do is go into here, the picture of the car that I lit up here. We're going to go to the brush. We're going to hit Alt to switch to the eyedropper tool, and we're going to find a good representative color, I think, right? This is pretty close here. So I'm looking at the colors change over here. It's pretty solid, which is good. There's a little bit of a dip here where it gets really light right here. So I think I'm going to grab it from here. I'm going to grab the red from over here because it's right next to it. So I don't worry about any changes in lighting. So if I've grabbed the blue here, and I grab the pink here, the lighting here is very much different than the lighting here. So I'm going to grab this blue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a folder at the top. I'm going to call it swatches, and I'm just going to put it somewhere that's masked off, let's say right here, just so I always have the color here. And if I'm playing with overlays and metallic layers and stuff, this area doesn't change, so so I always have the colors that I can easily come in and grab the color off of. And if I change the colors, I change the swatch as well. So now let's come in and see how the blue's gonna go. So the blue comes down, it goes right underneath this little wing mirror here, and it comes into like the 1 o'clock position on the wheel well. And then it, right down here, it kind of does this little jink back when it comes in right under the bend on the front windshield, or the front passenger side window. So let's use these as reference points. Comes out here under the headlight or under the mirror, and then about halfway down there. Okay, so we're coming out from about here. So we're going to come out from about here. We're going to go all the way up to about here, and then come back to about, so this car is a little bit, I think, a little bit of a different shape, so I don't think we're going to be so faithful, because if we do that, we're going to come out to here, and then this thing's going to come all the way back to here, which is going to look really funny. So we're going to come out about here to right under the mirror, which is where the block is, right behind the door, and then I think we go back from about halfway through this set of blocks to halfway through this set of blocks would be good. So let's do that. So it comes out around here, Is there a curve to this? Yes, there is a curve. Okay. And we're going to come to 1, 2. Okay, so 1, 2, right about here. That. Let's move this up a bit. Now the curve back is sharp, right? So it comes up, hits this point, and there's a sharp bend back. So now what we're going to do is use this Alt to click and remove this control point, because if I try to bend it back now, it's going to be this really smooth curve, and I don't want that. So I hit Alt, click on here, remove this control point, and now I can come back. Which way does it arc? It kind of comes straight. So, and then I can just click back here like that, and I have a nice sharp edge that I'm working with. How is it with respect to the door? Okay, so this completely covers the door handle in that picture, so let's go like that. Okay, so now we can I'm just going to come in and just rough the edges in like this, so that I have this side of the paint scheme. And I think, well, let's see how it looks first. Okay, so save it. I don't think I like this right here. Yeah, I definitely don't like that. Okay. And I want to bring this down, I think, a bit right on top of that. I think this doesn't look too bad here. That looks actually pretty good right here. I might want to make this arc up a little bit more, and I definitely want to put something here. I don't like this, and I need to move this point back about halfway through. So this point needs to come back, this point needs to come up, and this needs to come down just a little bit, and I want to put a little bit of an arc on this just to give it a little bit of shape so it's not so bland. And I'm going to rotate this up a bit just so it comes down. Like so, and we'll see what we get with that. Hopefully that gets us somewhere where we want to be. That's not too bad. I'm kind of digging that for now. I kind of wish... Okay, I still need to move this, pointing at the screen, like you can see me pointing at the screen. I need to move this point back just a little bit more, and then I can move this point back a little bit more as well. So let's move this point back a little bit, move this guy back a little bit, this guy back a little bit, and let's get this guy a little bit more of an arc on there. So let's try that, and let's see what it looks like without the wireframe on. So that's not too bad. I might want to... Yeah, that's not bad actually. Get out of the way, camera. This is a little bit smoother than I have here. So I think what I'm going to do is take this point, move it up, and then that'll let me smooth this curve out a little bit. Let's move it up to about here. Rotate it down to smooth the curve out a bit. And let's see what that looks like. So the reason I turn the wireframe off is sometimes the wireframe gets a little distracting, so it's hard to tell the actual shapes of these curves. That looks pretty good, although it's a little bit janky over here because I have that control point in. This control point right here. So it's kind of going up and then it pulls back down and then it goes back up. So let's try to smooth that out a little bit. Just move this up a tad, I think, and just drag this out to make it a little longer. That looks pretty smooth, so let's see what that looks like. Oops. DGA. Click, click, click. I think that looks a lot better, like that. So now we have a nice smooth curve coming down. Comes back. I'm not really digging this part right here still. I don't know, maybe I'll change this a little bit later. We'll see. That's the benefit of using the pen tool versus the brushes. I'm not really satisfied with this right now, but I don't need to worry about it. I can always come back to it and fix it later. So now up like this, that looks not too bad. So now the right side of this stripe is, of this little pattern deal right here is done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because we have this big white space here that I don't want, that actually should be filled with black, is I'm going to hit Control and click on this layer to select this layer, and then I'm going to click like on the line to select make all the control points visible. And what I'm going to do now is, because this layer is underneath, this layer will be masking it off and covering it up. I'm going to grab these control points and I'm going to drag them like this. I can make a new control point. I'm going to hit Alt to make it sharp, and I'm going to drag this underneath this. So, and I'm going to grab this point and drag it down like this, and I'm going to grab this point and drag it down like that, and I'll make a point here, because I don't know exactly what's in this box here. iRacing templates are a little bit weird. They're very difficult to paint compared to something like Live for Speed, which is pretty straightforward. So now we have our black stripe, we have our blue stripe. Let's see what this looks like. GA. And there we go. Okay, that's not too bad. I think that's definitely something we can work with. I can come back and fix this little part here, because what happened was when I came down here, when I added the last point in, it kind of pulled this curve down, so I can just come in and fill it up later. It's this piece right here, or I can fill it up right now, so I can just click on here, just with a quick shape like that, cover it up, and then double click it, pick the black color. So now that's covered. So now that's covered up, so it looks fine. This blue color I'm not really digging though. It looks like, in this picture, it looks a lot brighter than I have. This is really dark, and I'm not really digging that at all. So let's go back and see if we can't reselect this color and make it a little bit more accurate. So I grabbed it from here, and it's all the same around here. So maybe it just could be because of the black. Oops, oopsie. The black, but I'm not sure. So let's try to change. So if you can pick colors off of this color palette. If you click like that, that doesn't really change anything. So maybe let's try a different source file then, because this one doesn't seem to be doing anything for us. You know, maybe we'll see. This one, no, this one looks really dark too, but I might be able to get a nice color off here and here, because they're both facing the sun. The sun seems to be coming from this way. So maybe we try grabbing this color here. That's good. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. My computer crashed and ate the Photoshop file, so I went back, or some of the file, I went back and recreated the file as best as I could based on where we had left off. It's pretty much the same, except now I've saved it to my backup file, because when Photoshop went down, it didn't save all the changes that I made. So okay, that's why you always save to backups, people. Always have the backup. Now, so when we left off and my computer crashed, we're talking about changing this blue color because it was a little too dark, and I think I'm going to cut this video short soon because I think it's getting pretty long, and I'm sure a lot of you are getting pretty bored at this point of watching me try to line these things up. But let's just fix this color first, and then we'll call that a video, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here. Like I said, there's kind of even lighting here and here. So I'm going to hit B to go to the brush. Ooh, it's too big. Okay. I hit Alt to go to the eyedropper tool. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, if you click, you can see that there's two colors here. The one on the top is the color that I'm picking. The one on the bottom is the color, oops, the color that I had. So this is the color that I had. That. And if you see when I pick in this color, it looks a lot brighter, a lot more vibrant. So I'm thinking this is going to work for us. Let's see. See, if you double click here to change the color, you can click on here, it turns into a light dropper to select that color. Okay, we'll save it to our backup. And let's see what this does for us. Yeah, that's a lot better. That is a ton better. It's brighter, more vibrant, stands out nicely against the black. Looks really nice. Okay, so that's this part. And let's see, let's open up our file here again that we're working with. So that's this part right here, this blue piece. I think I might go back and tweak this area right here a little bit at some point, and the area in the back here I might tweak too. Not so much of a problem. That's a great thing about painting, is you can always go back and change things as you go along. You do something, it's not necessarily set in stone. It's nice now is the door handle is actually all blue, so that's going to save us a lot of heartache. So that's this line here. And so next time what I'll do, I think, is I'll finish up this blue. I'll probably put a lot of it in fast forward because you're not going to need to watch me use the pen all the time. So I might put that in fast forward, this part here with the front here and this stripe up here. And so really what we covered today is the basics of layers, using the pen tool, changing the color of the wireframe, how to use the pen tool, and the rationale that I personally use in order to recreate cars that have already been made. So I try to use, as you've seen me, as I try to figure my way through it, I try to use reference points on the car to figure out how far to go and how high to go. And I'm going to probably tweak some of these things around in a bit, but that's kind of the easy rationale. I personally find painting cars from scratch very difficult. I'm at the point now where coming up with the design is harder than implementing it. And I have total respect for the people that come up with unique paint schemes all the time and time again, that are really good, because that's a thing that I really have problems with. And I personally find they take a lot longer than just recreating something, because you change something, you change it again, you change it back and forth over and over and over again. You spend 12 hours just working on one little thing, and if you're recreating the hard work, at least for me, the hard work is already done for you, the designing of it. But anyway, I think I've talked way too much. It's probably been like half an hour, so we're going to leave it at that. And next time, like I said, we'll finish this blue stripe off, we'll start putting the red in, maybe we'll finish up the back, we'll come up here and do this, and then the episode after, maybe we'll start adding in all of these logos. Some of them, I've downloaded some logos already, they're on my desktop. I've downloaded some logos already, but some of them are kind of low quality, so we may need to actually redraw some of them, and so that's actually good practice of using the pen as well. But without going in too much, I'm going to call it at that, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.